Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sri Melit back with you with the next edition of the newsletter. I was in India for 4 weeks. I had mentioned this in my last video slash newsletter. And I had hoped to be able to record sessions and editions of the newsletter there, but because I had gone with a new phone and without my laptop because of fears of what might happen when I'm coming back in immigration, I was not able to record. And so I'm back in the United States and I am ready to continue. We had started talking about the book called My Grandmother's Hands, and the subtitle of that is Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies. Resmaa Menakem in that book talks about three populations. He talks about the white oppressor population, the African American oppressed population, and then the law enforcement officers. One of his thesis in the book really is that in order to heal or in order to get over white supremacy, which we are seeing manifested very much so in the United States, but also all over the world, it is not enough to change politics and policy. There is a need to heal bodies where the trauma is stored. And the point he makes is that each of these populations have generations of trauma that they carry within themselves. In terms of the oppressors or the people who are trying to establish white supremacy or who have the privilege of being white-skinned Americans or, anywhere else in the world, he talks about how Europe has had a very brutal history, right? In the Middle Ages, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of brutality, that a lot of those that came to the United States, that class of people, experienced brutality at the hands of the so-called higher, those in a higher class of society, and they carry that memory within them. And as we say, hurt people, right? And so he talks about how unless we recognize that these people who are doing the oppression, whether they are actively doing the oppression or not, in his mind, in his thesis, everybody who has a white skin is carrying remnants of this violence that their previous generations experienced, and therefore they need to be involved in healing that in order for us to make sure that we do not that we actually get over this in a way that is healthy and successful. And it's the same, of course, we know that the African Americans who were brought here in the slave ships have not only then, but then have subsequently experienced a lot of brutality. And they are also carrying that within them. And then there's the police, the law enforcement people who are a mixture of all of these communities who are also subject to using the trauma or reacting to the trauma that they carry in their bodies in a way that will hurt other people. You might think, why does Dr. Sri, who is clearly an Indian and not part of any of these populations, why is she reading this book out to us? It's because we all have this history, right? A large part of the world was colonialized. I come from a country that was colonialized, and where there is a huge history of oppression, of violence against the ruled, and there is a need all over the world for all communities to understand how to heal their bodies, why to heal their bodies, how to heal the trauma in their bodies, and why that is important. And and so I thought that at this particular time in our history, this is the best thing I can do, to spread this knowledge, this idea. Throughout the book, he talks about, um, throughout the book, he has exercises for us to participate, to engage in, that teaches our body to feel safe and teaches us to recognize, um, how the where this trauma lives in our body, and then to be able to shed it. So I will, be reading some of those out, or I will record them and post them as a YouTube video. The first of these is just getting into your body, and for that I already have a video that I will link in the newsletter. Now, before we go into what Resmaa Menakem says, I've also been reading Dr. Peter Levine's autobiography, which he calls An Autobiography of Trauma, A Healing Journey. As you may know, Dr. Peter Levine is, the person who developed a lot of the somatic healing work in the United States. And there is a lot to learn from him. But in particular, I wanted to read. I mentioned this in the last newsletter about this little boy called Johnny, whose healing he talks about in this book. Johnny, and I'm just going to read the story out to you. I will be looking down, but I think it's so illustrative of how, when we address the trauma stored in the body, there is a healing. When we allow that to be felt, and when we allow that to be released, there is a healing that happens. And I think it's extremely instructive for us to learn about that from this story about Johnny, the incubator baby. So from Dr. Peter Levine's book, this is, I think, chapter 9. He talks about the 4 most influential women in his life, and this therapist, Mira, is one of those. Johnny, the incubator baby, was one of the smallest boys ever to survive in the United States, weighing only 1.5 pounds at birth. Mira describes how his skin was shriveled and burned chocolate brown. He was, by all accounts, strangely ugly, unable to speak, walk, and apparently deaf and dumb. He was unreachable and unlovable. Johnny existed, but did not live. Yet, step by halting step, Mira was able to help him by breathing life into his limp and listless body, and then supporting him in taking his first steps, stabilized by her outstretched arms. After many of their sessions together, Johnny developed a compulsion to get in front of the light bulbs in Mira's office. From the very start, Mira was struck by Johnny's tremendous preoccupation with lights. The brighter the light, the more strongly he was attracted to it, and the more he wanted to get close to it. Like a moth drawn to a flame, he would crawl directly under the brightest lights while flapping his arms in a wing-like motion. Johnny's fascination with lights seemed meaningful to Mira. She felt it should be pursued. So Mira had Johnny's father, a carpenter by trade, build a life-size replica of Johnny's incubator. He constructed it with several lights in a transparent box and brought it into Mira's house the night before Johnny's next session. In it, they placed a doll that was the same size Johnny had been when he was an incubator baby. The next day, his parents brought Johnny to Mira's door and left him with her. The lights of the incubator were on as Johnny walked into the room. He sighted it immediately and stopped short. His whole body stiffened and then trembled and shook as his face turned an eerie green. And that trembling and shaking is one of the ways in which we release trauma stored in the body. Then came the decisive moment. John seemed to reel backwards. Yet instead of falling, he turned to Mira, and within a split second, his face took on a look of anguish, rage, and accusation. It seemed to say, "How could you do this to me?" Mira recounts his reaction and notes how this was the first time his eyes actually focused on her, or for that matter, on anyone. It took all Mira's strength to remember that she had to be brutal to Johnny, confronting his trauma by exposing him to the incubator for the sake of his healing. Within a few minutes, Johnny became a different child. No longer was his face blank. It expressed feelings. For the first time, Mira saw Johnny intact, emotionally and physically. She realized an important part of the battle had been won. When his mother came to pick him up, Johnny spoke the word "mama" as he wept with her for the first time. Then, during subsequent treatment sessions, he broke down and sobbed bitterly. After this, it became possible for him to cry, and along with daring to cry, he began to laugh, often heartily and with a mischievous sense of humor. After 3 years of therapy with Mira, he cried when hurt, laughed when happy, loved and evoked love in others. He was gradually able to form relationships with other children and also with other adults. He learned to consciously manipulate people and was adept at this in a way that was far beyond his years. He had become an altogether bright and engaging youngster. So do you see the absolute value of that understanding when she recognized that there was some connection with the lights, and then when he was able to relive that trauma of being in the incubator with all of those lights shining down on him, and his body shook and trembled, and the trauma was released, and he was then actually able to focus, he was able to talk, he became a normal child. That is the importance of understanding what trauma can do if stored in the body and not released, and why, if we have this history in the populations that we talked about, in the oppressor population, in the oppressed population, and in the law enforcement population, why it is so important for us to acknowledge that and give those populations a way to release that trauma. And let me just get back to the and then be able to heal. That is so important for us to understand. So I thought that it was really important to let you hear that story to understand why this book about racialized trauma and the body practices that he prescribes in there are important for us to know about. Okay, so let me just read a little bit um, of what Resmaa Menakem talks about. Okay, and I am going to just read out again what he calls rememberings about the primary um, points that he has in this in the first chapter. The first point: white body supremacy doesn't live just in our thinking brains; it lives and breathes in our bodies. As a result, we will never outgrow white body supremacy just through discussion, training, or anything else that is mostly cognitive. Instead, we need to look to the body and to the embodied experience of trauma. Our deepest emotions involve the activation of a single bodily structure, our vagus nerve. This nerve is connected to our lizard brain, which is concerned solely with survival and protection. Our lizard brain has only four basic commands: rest, fight, flee, or freeze. Now, this whole I the polyvagal theory that Dr. Steve Porges um, developed and published and wrote about um, is about the importance of the vagus nerve in interactions, right? And he created, I've talked about this in several of my interviews and podcasts, he created this word called neuroception. And what that word means is that it kind of derived from perception, but it is the neurophysiological system that we have that is constantly, because it is connected to the lizard brain, it is constantly scanning its surroundings. It's scanning the environment to see, am I safe? Am I will I survive this interaction or not? And when a person has trauma stored in their bodies, a lot of the time the answer to that is no. And so we become defensive when we don't feel safe. And when we become defensive, the person or persons that we are interacting with also becomes defensive. And then there is no communication. There is just fight or fleeing or freezing, right? So it completely shuts off communication. But when we learn to stay in our bodies, when we learn to make ourselves feel safe, and Dr. Dan Siegel talks about this as integration. When we are integrated, then the other person begins to feel safe, or the other people begin to feel safe. In order for us to be integrated, though, we need to recognize that there is trauma stored in the body and that it does need to be acknowledged, honored, and released. And this is one of the reasons why I say this all the time. This is one of the reasons why techniques like EFT are very effective, because we can address the trauma stored in the body. Let me go on. Reading. In the aftermath of a highly stressful event, our lizard brain may embed a reflexive trauma response, a wordless story of danger in our body. This trauma can cause us to react to present events in ways that seem out of proportion or wildly inappropriate to what is actually going on. And we have talked about this in previous newsletters, right? Where we talk about if your child ignores you, and if you have grown up uh, and stored memories of being ignored as a child, then you might have an explosive reaction to a simple statement like, I don't want you to give me a bath. I only want mommy to give me a bath, or I only want daddy to give me a bath. Pushing away the child, just saying what comes to its mind, and your internal reaction being way out of proportion to that. So that's what Menakem is talking about here. Trauma is routinely passed from person to person and generation to generation through genetics, culture, family structure, and the biochemistry of the egg, sperm, and the womb. Trauma is literally in our blood. Most African Americans know trauma intimately, but different kinds of racialized trauma also live and breathe in the bodies of most white Americans, as well as most law enforcement professionals. All of us need to metabolize the trauma, work through it, and grow up out of it with our bodies, not just our thinking brains. Only in this way will we heal at last, both individually and collectively. That healing is the purpose of this book. So this is the reason why I think this book is perfect to share right now. One of the first practices Menakem asks us to practice is getting into our bodies, right? A lot of us, a lot of the time, we are in our heads and, thinking about the past and the future, and not being in the present. And I have a meditation called Getting Fully Embodied, and I'm going to give you a link to that in this newsletter. I would love to hear what you think about this, about how important it is for us collectively to heal the oppressors and the oppressed and the law enforcement professionals. And what he talks about is how we do this individually, and then we do it collectively. So we do it in community. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. Please write back to me and tell me what you think about this. And also use that being fully embodied meditation, because it is something that really helps settle you, which we need so much right now. Thank you so much again for being here, for reading, for being open to learning about stuff like this. I just absolutely love this. I mean, I love to share this kind of knowledge. And I would love to have a book club or set up a group where we can actually do this work and be able to take it into communities that we can help with. So let me know if that works, that is something that you're interested in. I'll create a poll at the end of the newsletter so that you can let me know if you would like to participate in a book club that is specifically going through this book. God bless you. Thank you. I will see you hopefully next week. God bless.